The dust cloud billowed on the horizon like an angry storm as Nora Pierce squinted against the afternoon sun, her heart already sensing danger before her mind could process it. It was 1885 in the Arizona Territory, and the drought that had plagued Gila Bend for months had everyone on edge, cattle ranchers most of all. The distant rumble grew into a thunderous roar as Nora's mare, Whisper, pricked her ears forward, muscles tensing beneath the saddle. "Easy, girl," Nora murmured, patting the horse's neck. At 22, she'd grown up riding these lands, delivering medical supplies between her father's general store and the outlying homesteads. The daughter of the town's only merchant who also served as an unofficial doctor, Nora had learned early to navigate the harsh landscape alone. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a practical braid, her skin tanned from years under the relentless Arizona sun. The first cow crested the ridge ahead, followed by dozens more, their eyes wide with panic. Nora's blood ran cold as she realized what was happening. Drought-starved cattle had broken free, and now hundreds were stampeding directly toward her. "Go, Whisper." She dug her heels into the horse's flanks, turning sharply east toward a gully that might offer protection. The mare responded instantly, breaking into a gallop, but the herd was spreading, cutting off her escape route. Dust filled Nora's lungs as the thundering mass of cattle surrounded them, the ground trembling violently beneath Whisper's hooves. A steer brushed against them, causing Whisper to sidestep frantically. Nora fought to maintain control, but another collision sent the horse stumbling. Time seemed to slow as Nora felt herself slipping from the saddle, her body airborne for one terrifying moment before crashing to the hard, packed earth. Pain exploded through her shoulder and hip. She rolled instinctively, desperate to avoid the pounding hooves all around her. Crawling toward a boulder, Nora pressed herself against the stone as cattle streamed past on both sides. She closed her eyes, certain that at any moment she would be trampled to death. The sound was deafening, the earth itself seeming to split apart beneath the force of hundreds of panicked animals. Then, cutting through the chaos, came the sound of another horse, this one moving against the flow of cattle, its rider whistling and shouting. Nora opened her eyes to see a man on a powerful black stallion forcing his way through the herd, a lasso swinging above his head. His face was obscured by a bandana against the dust, but his movements were confident, almost graceful despite the danger. The cowboy reached her boulder, leaning down from his saddle with one arm extended. "Take my hand," he shouted above the din. Nora didn't hesitate. She grabbed his arm, gasping as he hauled her up with surprising strength. She found herself seated sideways in front of him, his arm tight around her waist as he turned his horse and urged it forward. "Hold on." His voice was close to her ear as they plunged back into the sea of cattle, the stallion sure-footed even in the chaos. Nora clung to the saddle horn, her body pressed against the stranger's chest, feeling each breath he took as they navigated through the stampede. It seemed like hours, but was likely only minutes before they broke free of the herd, the stallion carrying them to higher ground where they could watch the cattle continue their destructive path eastward. Only then did the cowboy loosen his grip on her waist, though he kept one arm protectively around her. "Are you hurt?" He pulled down his bandana, revealing a face younger than she'd expected, perhaps 26 or 27, with eyes the color of the summer sky and a strong jawline shadowed with several days' growth of beard. I don't think anything's broken," Nora managed, though every inch of her body screamed with pain. "My horse will find her," he assured her. "Horses are smarter than cattle. She probably made it to safety." He helped her sit more comfortably in the saddle. "I'm Cole Grayson." "Nora Pierce," she replied, suddenly aware of how close they were, his arm still steady around her. "Thank you for saving my life." Cole smiled, and something warm unfurled in Nora's chest despite her pain. "Just doing what any decent man would do," he said. "Now let's get you somewhere safe and see about finding your mare." As they rode double toward town, Nora fighting waves of dizziness, she couldn't help wondering what twist of fate had placed Cole Grayson on that same stretch of land, just when she needed him most. By the time they reached Gila Bend, the sun was sinking low in the sky, painting the desert in fiery gold. Cole brought his stallion to a stop outside the doctor's office, but Nora shook her head. "My father's store is just down the street. He has medical supplies there," she explained. The town was in an uproar over the stampede, men gathering horses to ride out and assess the damage. Several called out to Cole as they passed, and Nora realized he must be known here, though she'd never seen him before. Cole helped her down from his horse, his hands gentle on her waist. Nora winced as her feet touched the ground, her ankle giving a sharp protest. "You're hurt worse than you're letting on," Cole observed, frowning as he steadied her. "It's just a sprain," she insisted, though she couldn't put weight on her right foot. Without warning, Cole swept her into his arms. "Direct me to your father's store, Miss Pierce." Nora was too surprised and in too much pain to protest. She pointed down the street to the two-story building with Pierce General Merchandise painted across its wooden facade. Cole carried her easily, nodding to the curious onlookers who stared at them as they passed. Thomas Pierce was behind the counter when they entered, his face transforming from polite greeting to alarm when he saw his daughter in a stranger's arms. "Nora, what happened?" He rushed forward, his spectacles askew on his nose. "Stampede, sir," Cole explained, carrying Nora to a chair behind the counter. "She was caught in it about 5 miles east. Her horse got spooked and she took a fall." "Good Lord." Thomas examined his daughter with practiced hands, checking for broken bones. "You could have been killed." "I would have been if not for Mr. Grayson," Nora said, her eyes finding Cole's. "He rode right into the middle of it to pull me out." Thomas Pierce straightened, extending his hand to Cole. "Then I owe you a debt I can never repay, Mr. Grayson." Cole shook his hand firmly. "No debt, sir. Any man would have done the same." "Not many men would ride into a stampede," Thomas disagreed. "You must stay for dinner at the very least." "Our home is above the store." Cole looked as if he might decline, but then his eyes met Nora's again, and something passed between them, a flicker of interest, of curiosity. "Thank you, Mr. Pierce. That's mighty kind of you." While Thomas fetched bandages and liniment for Nora's injuries, she studied Cole more carefully. His clothes were dusty but well made, his manner confident but not arrogant. He wasn't from Gila Bend, she would have remembered him, but he seemed familiar with the area. "Are you passing through?" she asked as he helped her father wrap her ankle. "Not exactly." Cole's hands were gentle despite their strength and calluses. "I've taken a job with the Rollins outfit just north of town. Started last month." "The Forgotten Canyon Ranch," Thomas Pierce raised his eyebrows. "Old man Rollins doesn't hire many new hands." "We served together in the Army," Cole explained. "I needed work, and he needed someone who could help manage the place. His arthritis is getting worse." "Well, we're fortunate you were nearby today." Thomas finished with the bandage and patted Nora's hand. "I'll send one of the Weaver boys to look for Whisper. You need to rest that ankle." Before Nora could protest, there was a commotion outside and Sheriff Martin burst through the door, his gray mustache quivering with urgency. "Thomas, we need supplies for the men heading out to round up the scattered cattle." His eyes landed on Cole. "Grayson, just the man I wanted to see. Rollins is gathering a crew, said to tell you to meet at the ranch." Cole nodded, standing. "I'll head there now, but dinner." Thomas began. Another time, perhaps. Cole tipped his hat to Nora. Rest that ankle, Miss Pierce. I'll come by tomorrow to see how you're faring if that's all right. Of course, she replied, surprised by how much she wanted to see him again. And thank you again, Mr. Grayson. After Cole left, Nora endured her father's fussing and concerned questions, but her mind kept returning to the cowboy's blue eyes and the solid strength of his arms around her. There had been something in his face, a quiet intensity, a gentleness beneath his obvious strength that intrigued her more than she cared to admit. The next morning, Nora woke to the news that Whisper had returned to town on her own, unharmed but exhausted. It was a relief, but not as great as the relief she felt when Cole Grayson walked through the store door shortly after noon, his hat in his hands and his eyes searching for her. "Miss Pierce," he smiled, approaching the counter where she sat with her bandaged ankle propped on a stool. "You're looking better today. And you look like you haven't slept," she observed, noting the dark circles under his eyes. "We were out all night rounding up cattle." He rolled his shoulders, which were clearly stiff from hours in the saddle. "Most of them are accounted for, though some wandered all the way to the river. Please sit." She gestured to a chair beside her. "Can I offer you coffee? Or something stronger after such a night? Coffee would be welcome." Cole settled into the chair with a grateful sigh. "Your father around?" "He's making deliveries. With me stuck behind the counter, he has to do the rounds himself." She poured him coffee from the pot kept warm on the small stove near the counter. "He'll be sorry he missed you." Cole accepted the mug with a nod of thanks. "And how's the ankle?" "Swollen, but not broken. I'll be back on my feet in a few days." They fell into easy conversation, Cole asking about her life in Gila Bend, Nora curious about his past. He told her about growing up in Texas, his years in the Army, and the restlessness that had brought him west after his discharge. "I've been drifting for 2 years," he admitted. "Never stayed anywhere longer than a few months, but this place." He glanced out the window at the dusty street. "Something about it feels different." Customers came and went, and Cole helped her serve them, learning where items were kept and the prices with surprising quickness. By the time Thomas Pierce returned in the late afternoon, Cole had become an unofficial store clerk, much to Nora's amusement. "Mr. Grayson." Thomas exclaimed, pleased. "I see you've been keeping my daughter company." "Your daughter's been teaching me the mercantile business," Cole replied with a smile that transformed his face, softening its weathered lines. "Stay for supper," Thomas insisted. "No excuses this time." That evening, seated at the Pierces' simple dining table, Nora discovered that Cole was well-read, with opinions on everything from politics to literature. He'd brought books with him when he traveled, he explained, trading them for new ones in each town he visited. "My mother taught school," he said when Nora expressed surprise at his knowledge of Dickens. "She made sure I had an education even after she passed." "And your father?" Thomas asked, serving apple pie for dessert. A shadow passed over Cole's face. "Died in the war when I was 12. Confederate side. The conversation flowed naturally, and when Cole finally took his leave, Nora found herself reluctant to see him go. At the door, he lingered, hat in hand. "I'd like to call on you properly, Miss Pierce," he said, his voice lower than it had been all evening. "If you're amenable." Heat rose to Nora's cheeks. "I would like that very much, Mr. Grayson." His smile was slow and genuine. "Cole, please call me Cole." "Nora," she offered in return, and the way he said her name made it sound like something precious. Over the next 3 weeks, as Nora's ankle healed, Cole became a regular visitor to the Pierce household. He came for dinner twice more, brought books he thought she might enjoy, and on Sundays when the store was closed, he took her riding slowly at first, mindful of her recovery. On one such ride, They stopped by a small creek where cottonwoods offered shade against the August heat. Cole spread a blanket on the ground and produced a simple lunch from his saddlebags: bread, cheese, and dried fruit. "You came prepared," Nora observed, settling on the blanket. "I may have had help from Mrs. Davis at the boarding house." He sat beside her, leaving a respectable distance between them. "She seems to think I need feeding up." Nora laughed. "Mrs. Davis thinks everyone needs feeding up." They ate in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the trickle of water over stones. It was Cole who finally spoke, his voice thoughtful. "I've never stayed in one place this long since leaving Texas," he said, gazing at the water. "Never wanted to." Nora's heart quickened. "And now?" Cole turned to her, his expression serious. "Now I'm finding reasons to put down roots." The air between them seemed to thicken. Cole reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered on her cheek. "Nora," he began, but was interrupted by the distant sound of gunshots. Both of them stood quickly, Cole's hand moving instinctively to the pistol at his hip. 3 more shots rang out, coming from the direction of town. "We should go back," Cole said, already gathering their things. "Could be trouble." They rode swiftly back to Gila Bend to find a crowd gathered outside the saloon. Sheriff Martin stood on the boardwalk, his deputy beside him holding a man in handcuffs. Thomas Pierce was among the onlookers, his face grave. "What happened?" Nora asked as they dismounted. "Fletcher James tried to rob the bank," her father explained. "Shot the teller when he raised the alarm. Poor Jenkins is with the doctor now, but it doesn't look good." Cole's expression darkened. "Fletcher James, the outlaw from the wanted posters." "The same," the sheriff confirmed, overhearing. "And he claims his gang is nearby, waiting for him. We're organizing men to stand guard tonight." Cole turned to Nora. "I should help. Will you be all right getting home?" "Of course," she assured him. "Be careful." That night, as promised, Fletcher James's gang attempted to free him from the jail. The ensuing gunfight left 2 gang members dead, 1 wounded and captured, and Gila Bend's deputy with a bullet grazed to the arm. Cole returned to the boarding house at dawn, exhausted but unharmed, only to find Nora waiting anxiously on the porch. "I heard the shooting," she explained, rising to meet him. "I had to know you were safe." The concern in her eyes undid something in Cole. Without thinking, he pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as if to reassure himself that she was real. When he finally released her, he didn't step back. "I nearly lost you to that Stampede," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I'm not taking any more chances with time." And then he kissed her, gently at first, then with growing urgency as she responded, her arms twining around his neck. When they parted, both breathless, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "I'm falling in love with you, Nora Pierce," he whispered. "I think I started falling the moment I pulled you onto my horse." "I think I started when I opened my eyes and saw you coming for me," she admitted, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "As if you'd ridden straight out of my dreams." Their courtship progressed swiftly after that morning. Cole became a fixture at the Pierce household, helping in the store when he wasn't working at the Forgotten Canyon Ranch. Thomas Pierce watched their growing attachment with approval, telling Nora privately that he hadn't seen a finer young man in all his years. By October, the desert heat had given way to milder days, and Cole had saved enough from his work with Rowlands to put a down payment on a small ranch of his own, just 100 acres with a modest cabin. But it represented something he'd never sought before: permanence. "It needs work," he told Nora as he showed her the property one crisp afternoon. "The roof leaks in 2 places, and the corral needs rebuilding." "It's wonderful," she said sincerely, standing in the doorway of the cabin and imagining what it could become with care and attention. You'll make something fine of it." Cole took her hands in his. "I'm hoping we will make something of it together." He drew a deep breath. "Nora, I know we haven't known each other long by some standards, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I love you. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Tears sprang to Nora's eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, with all my heart." They were married in November in Gila Bend's small church, with Thomas Pierce giving away the bride and Mr. Rowland standing as Cole's best man. The entire town turned out for the celebration afterward, the general store transformed by lanterns and flowers for dancing that lasted well into the night. Their first months of marriage were both blissful and challenging. They moved into the cabin, working side by side to make it a home. Nora continued to help her father at the store several days a week, while Cole divided his time between their small ranch and his work for Rowland's. Winter brought unexpected heavy rains that turned the desert briefly green, but also caused the roof to leak worse than before. Nora would laugh about it later, how they'd spent one stormy night moving buckets around the cabin, ending up soaked and muddy but laughing in each other's arms. Spring arrived with promise. Cole and Nora planted a vegetable garden beside the cabin, and she began keeping chickens. With his army pay saved and his earnings from the Rowlands ranch, Cole purchased a small herd of cattle to start their own stock. On a warm evening in April, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the desert in gold and crimson, Nora took Cole's hand and placed it gently on her stomach. "We'll need to add a room to the cabin," she said softly. "By winter, there will be 3 of us." Cole's expression transformed from confusion to wonder. "A baby, you're certain?" Nora nodded, her heart full as she watched joy spread across her husband's face. He gathered her into his arms, pressing kisses to her hair, her cheeks, her lips. "I never thought I'd have this," he confessed, his voice thick with emotion. "A home, a family of my own. You've given me everything, Nora." "We've given it to each other," she corrected gently. "From the moment you rode into that stampede to save me." Their son, Thomas Cole Grayson, was born in December, a healthy, strong, lunged boy with his father's blue eyes and his mother's determined chin. Cole paced outside their bedroom during the long labor, terrified of losing Nora, but when the midwife finally called him in, the sight of his wife cradling their newborn son brought him to his knees beside the bed. "He's perfect," Cole whispered, carefully touching the downy head. "Just like his mother." Life settled into a new rhythm with the baby. The small ranch prospered under Cole's careful management, and by the time Thomas was walking, they had expanded the cabin, adding not just 1 room but 2. Nora's father was a frequent visitor, delighting in his grandson and bringing news from town. It was Thomas Pierce who brought word in the summer of 1887 that a railroad spur line would soon reach Gila Bend, connecting it to Phoenix and beyond. The news brought both opportunity and concern to the small community. "Land prices will rise," Cole observed as they discussed it over dinner, "and new people will come. Change is coming whether we welcome it or not," Nora's father said philosophically. "The question is how we adapt." Cole and Nora decided to adapt by expanding their ranching operation, using their savings to purchase adjoining land when their neighbor decided to sell and move to California. Cole hired 2 hands to help with the growing herd, building a bunkhouse for them near the main house. The railroad arrived in the spring of 1888, bringing with it merchants, laborers, and travelers. Thomas Pierce's general store thrived with the influx of new customers, and he hired an assistant, allowing Nora to focus more on the ranch and raising Thomas, now a curious, energetic toddler who followed his father everywhere. On the 2nd anniversary of their wedding, Cole surprised Nora with a trip to Phoenix, their first journey away from the ranch since Thomas was born. Her father stayed at the cabin to watch the boy, insisting they deserved time alone together. In Phoenix, they stayed at a grand hotel, ate in restaurants, and attended a theatrical performance luxuries that made Nora feel both pampered and slightly out of place in her best dress, which was simple compared to the fashionable attire of the city women. "You outshine them all," Cole told her sincerely when she confessed her self-consciousness. "You're the most beautiful woman in Arizona territory, Nora Grayson." On their final night in Phoenix, after a private dinner in their hotel room, Cole presented her with a small velvet box. "I've been saving for this since before Thomas was born," he explained as she opened it to find a gold locket, delicately engraved with flowers. "Open it." Inside was a tiny photograph of Thomas on one side and Cole on the other, both smiling at the camera. "Oh, Cole." Tears filled her eyes as he fastened it around her neck. "It's the most perfect gift I could imagine." "You gave me my life, Nora," he said, drawing her into his arms. "A home, a son, a purpose. This is just a token of what you mean to me." When they returned to the ranch, they found Thomas happily playing with wooden animals Cole had carved for him, barely seeming to have noticed their absence. The reunion was joyful nonetheless, with Cole tossing his son high in the air to hear him laugh. That spring, Nora discovered she was expecting their second child. The pregnancy was easier than her first, and in November of 1889 they welcomed a daughter they named Elizabeth Rose, after both their mothers. As the years passed, the Grayson ranch grew, as did their family. A second son, James, arrived in 1891, completing their family. The railroad brought prosperity to Gila Bend, and though it remained a small town by some standards, it boasted a proper school by the time Thomas was ready to attend, a bank, and even a small hotel for travelers. Cole became known as one of the most successful ranchers in the area, respected for his fair dealings and hard work. Nora, besides raising their children, became involved in establishing the town's first library, donating many of the books she and Cole had collected over the years. On the 10th anniversary of the day Cole had rescued Nora from the Stampede, they held a celebration at the ranch, inviting friends and neighbors for a day of feasting and dancing. As the sun set, they slipped away from the festivities to the spot by the creek where they had shared their first picnic. 10 years, Nora marveled, her hand in his as they stood watching the water flow. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday that you came charging through those cattle to save me." Cole turned to face her, his face more lined than it had been a decade before, but his eyes still the same vivid blue that had captured her heart. "Best decision I ever made, riding into that stampede. Even though you nearly got yourself killed," she teased. "Even then." He wrapped his arms around her waist, drawing her close. "I'd ride into 100 stampedes for the life we've built together." Nora reached up to touch his face, now familiar as her own reflection. "I love you, Cole Grayson, more with each passing year. And I love you, Nora Grayson, more than I have words to express." As twilight deepened around them, they shared a kiss as sweet and full of promise as their first had been. Surrounded by the land they'd made their own and secure in the knowledge that their love born in a moment of danger and courage had only grown stronger with each passing day. When they finally returned to the celebration, they found their children waiting impatiently to cut the anniversary cake Thomas Pierce had brought from town. Surrounded by family and friends, with the ranch house glowing with lamplight behind them and stars appearing in the vast Arizona sky above, Cole caught Nora's eye across the gathering and smiled a private smile that spoke of shared memories and the promise of many more years to come. In that moment, Nora was certain that some forces were stronger than fate itself. The thundering hooves that had nearly claimed her life had instead led her to the greatest love she would ever know. And though the dangers of the West had tested them many times over the years, the strength they found in each other had proven more enduring than any challenge life could present.